Welcome to the Every Gym podcast. My name is Andy Brady, and I'm joined today in studio, not by Dr. Thomas, but by our Preteen Pastor, Jason Medlin. Medlin, say hi.
Hi.
And local Parker County TikTok famous resident, Robbie McDonald. Robbie, would you address your audience?
Hi.
Today we are asking, is there an app for that? Welcome to the Every Gym podcast. As you can tell, I'm super excited that we get to be joined today by Jason and Robbie. And we're going to be talking about a labor of love that both of y'all have been working on for a long time. Before we go any further, though, I want to give like a little parental warning. Obviously, it's not going to be explicit, but we are going to be talking about some things that could be of an adult content. And so from parent to parent, I would suggest maybe deciding if you want to hit pause and listen without your kids before you listen with your kids. Having said that, guys, you both worked on what y'all have called a booklet. I think that's too small given just how much has gone into it and what's included in it, but it's called High-Tech Parenting. Today we're going to discuss, high-tech parenting and discipleship, but part of bringing this up in our podcast for every generation, even those that aren't in a parenting season, is I personally found a lot to glean from it that's helpful to Andy, I hate talking in third person, but that's helpful to me, the man, not just me, the dad, or me, the husband. So the first thing that I think we can all agree on, correct me if I'm wrong, is we all agree that all tech is evil. and that is the crux of what your research has found, correct?
It does feel like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It certainly can be.
So then all tech should always be embraced with no safeguards.
No.
Right. I started out, there's basically three ways you can respond. The one is give me all of the tech. Two is give me none of the tech. And three is just pretend like tech doesn't exist. And all three have their positive and negatives.
Yeah.
But we find parents react all across the board in all three areas. And all of them have positives and all of them has negatives.
And well-intentioned parents that love their kids love the Lord, right? Like those things are true, and we can end up in all three of these camps. Obviously, our audience is probably going to be skewed because you're more likely than not listening to this through a tech device.
Right, it does feel a little weird. Open up your social media and let's talk about the evils of social media.
This is going to be such a good episode. If I'm listening to this, I could probably hit the skip 30 seconds button about every 17 seconds. Can you Robbie, tell us in general, what inspired your element of this labor? Because Medlin's on staff, and this is part of equipping and ministering to his age group with preteens and their parents, but you're not, and you devoted a lot of time. So what was your inspiration for this?
Well, first of all, I'd heard from Jason that there were parents that were coming to him and saying, like, hey, how do I roll out technology to my family? And then also for me, I have a 5-year-old son, or about to be 5-year-old son, and about to be 2-year-old daughter. So I'm not really in that realm yet. But I'm a planner, and I know the risks and dangers out there, not just for my kids, but for myself and my family as well. So I wanted this resource. This was a resource that I needed. How do I handle technology in my family? How do I honor God with technology in my house? How do I honor God with the time that I use to spend on it? And then how can I protect myself from seeing things that I don't want to see, or I don't want my kids to see or hear? So I approached Pastor Jason. I was like, hey, look, you know how to make these guidelines because you're trained to help families make good, godly decisions in their household, how they bring up their kids and things like that. I'm a big fat nerd. So that's what I brought to the table.
As an occupation, what do you do?
So I'm an engineer by trade. So big fat nerd, right? I have the degrees.
Former math teacher, big nerd.
Yeah, right.
Big nerd beside me.
So what I was looking for was more so, okay, how do the parental controls work? Yeah. What are the different applications that are out there? I heard of some seen some online, like, okay, Bark and then Covenant Eyes and things like that. Like, well, is there a recommended one? Is there a good one? Is there a bad one? And I looked at probably the 200 biggest churches in the Southern Baptist Convention for that resource on their website. Granted, it's on their website, so they might have it, but In all those 200, there was one church
Holy cow.
that had any information on there about how I could roll out social media to my family one day, or not just social media, but technology to my family one day. So I came to Pastor Jason, and he was like, "Bro, I've already been thinking about this." And I was like, "Did we just become best friends?" And then we teamed up, and then here we are, sitting at a podcast.
If you're listening, they just made a heart with their hands.
I also serve with Jason on Wednesday nights in preteens.
And that is officially the fastest that we've gone off the rails. Look at us.
Set your standards high.
This is
there
why
you
we
go.
can't have basic things.
This is why we get nice things. That's right.
What was, I mean, yes, it is it is part of your calling to this church, but I also know you. And so could you maybe share part of why you cared about this? to the
Yeah,
depth
it was
you
a
did?
great, it was a pure movement of God, because about the same time God is laying this on Robbie's heart, I'm having a conversation with several parents that, one family is a great spiritual leading family that does at-home Bible studies, and they're struggling with this with some of their older children. And then we had another family who is struggling, and yet they were on the opposite end. They had no filters, the computers in the room, the phones in the room, and they're all struggling. At the same time, I had a conversation with one of our staff members who had a child that was graduating. And as she's sharing what she was struggling with, I found that what she's struggling with was exactly what I was struggling with. And we both said, we feel like we're the only ones that deal with this. Why don't we ever tell other parents what we're struggling with?
Yeah.
And what I've learned through this process is that if you have a teenager, you're struggling with technology.
Yeah.
And the enemy uses isolation as one of the greatest tools to keep parents from progressing, because they're like, if you tell somebody that you're struggling with this, you will be branded a terrible family or a terrible parent.
Yeah.
And the reality is that that's not true. And so so when Robbie called me and goes, "Bro, I'm thinking about doing this," I was like, "This is wonderful," because I am a nerd in my own right, but I don't want to go search 200 churches looking for this, and I don't want to go research all of the stuff, but he does.
Yeah.
And so I can write the content and the spiritual kind of content and the presentation with his information.
Yeah.
And it was amazing how God brought that together at the same time.
Totally off topic, but so same but different, still related. Like, this is how the body of Christ is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Like, you have a unique skill set, not Liam Neeson in the movie Taken, but you have a unique skill set.
I do have that skill set.
And it's a very precise skill set. You have a unique skill set and a heart for things that are similar to the heart that Medlin has. And you have a very different skill set. And it required both working within the body to build up the body, referencing Ephesians 4, for this to come about. And I just think I like to point out those moments.
Yeah.
Because I think as someone whose calendar is full, that I often will withdraw from optional church things immediately. And it's like, hey, the more I withdraw, the more I'm missing out on what God's wanting to use and do. Like, if you've got a full life, bro. So if you're like, hey, I don't even have a preteen, why would I help Medlin? Okay, well, but God put it on your heart, and here's a product of what God wanted to do in that. So anyways, I just think that's neat.
Yeah, it was cool.
Was this high-tech parenting, is this focused solely on smartphones? Was that the full scope of your research and stuff, or what all was encompassed in this tech-wise?
Yeah, so I approached Jason with just a ginormous spreadsheet of all kinds of stuff, but it was I looked at 17 different applications that were across multiple different operating systems and multiple different devices. So it's not just phones, it's not just Apple phones, it's not Android phones, it's all of it, including laptops, tablets, regular computers and things like that.
Video game systems,
smart TVs, all that stuff. And we looked at almost 30 different metrics for each one of those different applications or tool sets or whatever, and kind of evaluated each application based on that, and it came up with a recommendation at the end of the day based on that work.
Okay. And by application, you mean something that I can have installed on whatever type of tech device that we have.
Sure.
That's connect. And if I'm trying to look for like a generic rule of thumb, we're talking about any device that can connect to the internet.
Yeah.
right? So that's why
Right.
you're including smart TVs and stuff in this. And by applications, you're looking at, hey, is there something I can purchase, download, or put on here that's going to safeguard everything from everything?
That's right. But if you're about to jump off the podcast and hear me say this, that was not the fire and forget approach that we have. That is, in my opinion, the last line of defense.
And
Yeah,
that's
it
part of
really
the heart
is.
of this.
And that's kind of where I came in, because as I started to look deeper into the research, every single protective guardrail that we found
has flaws
and can be broken.
Yeah.
And I tell parents, the more guardrails you put in your house, you've just kind of created your own little video game for your child to try to break,
Yeah.
right? With different levels and different, And so what I try to tell parents and is, yes, you need to put the guardrails up, but really what this is about is godliness.
Let's go.
Right?
Amen.
We're trying to disciple our children in a digital age, right? Because yes, we want them when they are or when they want to go make a mistake online, we want a guardrail to try to protect that. But we really want to deal with, why is it that you're going to want to make that mistake? Like, let's try to fix that. And we've got 18 years to try to do that, and hopefully we can by the time we release you into the wild, so to speak.
Yeah, that's that's a good one to end that with. I thought that was, you know me, I think anytime we have a movement that is about behavior modification that removes Christ from the center of it and a transformed heart, we are literally removing the power that is available to us.
Right.
And so the fact that this is at the heart of it is, to me, what allows it to be powerful. That, no, this is about pursuing godliness. This is about discipling my child, or even just my own self-discipline and protecting myself. So no, I love that. If this study that y'all have done, it did not focus solely on sexually explicit content. Is that correct?
Yes.
What other areas regarding technology were you like, hey, we need a plan regarding tech beyond just sexually explicit stuff? Here's some other dimensions that we found dramatically influences our kids online and us. We're not immune to this. Sorry, that's a random soapbox I found.
Oh yeah,
ahead.
that's a good point too. Yeah, of course, sexually explicit content was on the list of things to look for, but it goes well beyond that. Cyberbullying, even just usage. How long are you spending on certain applications and things like that? Inadvertent microtransactions. Are your kids accidentally spending 99 cents for a new life on a game 1,500 times on a credit card that's connected? Which
we found lots of examples of.
Yes, yeah.
And $1,500 wasn't even the biggest one.
Yeah, one guy had $10,000 on it, and you're not gonna get that money back either. So
No, sorry, my kid didn't mean to buy this.
Right.
Does it?
Why do we have
It's not in the
$10,000?
return policy.
Why are we paying 10 grand to Candy Crush?
seriously,
We were trying to buy a house, but our credit score got cut in
Right.
half because Billy maxed out the cards. All right, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So it's certainly not just that. There's some of these applications will monitor how you treat one another, how people are treating you, even as far as like your location. Where are the devices located? Can I monitor? I took my phone to so-and-so's house. Did I actually go to so-and-so's house? And things like that. So there's a lot of things out there that a lot of snakes in the grass related to technology that are not just sexually explicit things too, that we have to be aware of.
That's good. It was. I appreciated that it included those other dimensions, because we're all close-ish to the same age, ish.
Sorry, I'm so old.
No, it's fine. Like,
Sorry.
right, like you were graduating college and I was entering elementary school. These are good things.
Okay.
Maybe not that big a gap. Maybe. But when we were of the age that the internet really became ubiquitous and used by everybody, the real dangers were just sexually explicit content. And so it stand to reason if, as a parent who grew up in that age, that it's like, oh, if I've somehow safeguarded sexually explicit content from ever entering my house, then I can just let my kids run free like an 80s child in the mall regarding technology. But I love that both of you were like, no, there is cyberbullying, and that is real, and that is impacting kids on a deep level, and often they're not telling parents about it. But then also the social media usage and the impacts of that on students. And I thought that was great. I didn't know, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, there's just so much in that because, like you said, they're not telling their parents about it. Well, the reason they're not telling parents about it is because when kids do come to parents and say, hey, I might have seen something that I wasn't supposed to, or I did this and I need to confess, it's so easy to react out of fear and fly off the handle.
Yeah.
And overreact and over discipline. And all you do when you do that is you train your kids, don't come to me again because you're going to get the hammer, right?
Yeah.
And so kids learn, I can't take this to my mom and dad because they're going to overreact and they're going to freak out. And so one of the greatest challenges to parents is just to continue to be the calmest person in the room and go, okay, this is something that we have to address, but I can't overreact because the fallout of that is a long term of secrets from your children.
No, that's good. That's really good. I appreciate that perspective. And
But
things
man,
like
it's
that
so hard.
I believe you, right? And even in just because my kid's not yet being to those ages yet of teenager and stuff, we've even had to try to come up with our own policies. That sounds so bureaucratic, but our own procedures and responses so that when they do tell us stuff, it's like I have to respond in a way that encourages honesty on their side.
Yeah, it's almost like
because that can also encourage honesty before the Lord on them.
Yeah,
too.
you have to know, okay, I've memorized a script so that when my son brings this to me, I don't fly off the handle. I say something and I don't let my emotions control the response, right? I've prepared for this, you've prepared for this moment.
Yeah.
And so
You could even write that down, like actually write that down.
Yeah.
And have
Like
it, like,
it's almost like, okay, your son comes to you and he's looking at sexually explicit, or he's looking at YouTube videos he's not supposed to, or whatever. And you go pull out the script and go, okay, I'm not upset with you. I love,
Yeah.
Even if you do something like that, that just gets it to where you're not flying off the handle, where they go, you said I could come to you. Now you're whipping me. Right. What's going on with that?
Yeah. That was so. I'm trying to remember. I think it's John 7, where the woman caught in adultery is brought before Christ, and he, they throw him in front of him, and it says he bends down and he, scribbles something in the dirt, and we've all heard tons of messages about what did he write, and the answer is we don't know, and
right.
if we say we know, we're lying. But one of the things that was taught to us was, hey, it's possible he was doodling in the dirt so that he could respond instead of react.
Yeah.
And part of me trusting Christ's authority and control of all things is building in those mechanisms that allow me to breathe long enough to respond instead of react. Yeah. That's
one of the things that I try to tell parents, remind parents, is you are a sinner. Your husband, your wife, your spouse, you're sinners, and you are raising sinners. So why would we think that we could give our children phones or smart TVs or computers and they wouldn't sin with it?
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to tell yourself that, okay, this is a sinner and I don't want him to be a sinner or her to be a sinner, but the reality is they are. So when they mess up, you got to treat it accordingly. Right. So
that's good. Yeah. That's good. Robbie, when we were talking before this, you mentioned like, hey, most of the time first exposure is not, they got online and they were pursuing it. While that does exist, you used a key phrase for first time exposure.
It was inadvertent disclosure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us what that is in a way that normal people.
Explain it to me, Robbie.
Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah. Explain it like I'm 5. So, putting in, taking advantage, and in the high tech parenting booklet, which is a resource that's now available here at Northside, there's 3 lines of defense that are detailed in the back in the book. And the first line of defense is going to be, good sense, godly guidelines, godliness, right?
Yeah.
The second line of defense is going to be use the parental controls that are already installed on these devices.
Yeah.
Because they're there and they're free and they're available. They're not perfect, but it's something.
Yeah.
And then the third line of defense is kind of optional. It's like, do I want to use some sort of accountability and monitoring software? And that's what the tech trade study discussed. In my opinion, the purpose of 2 and 3 are to prevent somebody or a child who has really grasped a hold of that first line of defense. They're not looking for this stuff.
Yeah.
And we have all done it. We've been scrolling, like a lot of us guys, the algorithms are kind of tuned against us as you're scrolling through Instagram reels or whatever. All of a sudden you see something that is not appropriate for us to be seeing. And what that I would call is inadvertent disclosure. Like, we're not out there seeking that information.
Yeah.
We're not trying to hear those things. We're not trying to see those things. But they're presented to us by the state of the world that we live in today. So those protections are in place to prevent accidentally seeing things that we shouldn't be seeing, inadvertent disclosure of those things. Because a lot of stuff, once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm sure we can all, if we close our eyes and imagine, when was the first time I saw something and that image is ingrained and burned in your brain? That is likely going to happen with your child. And I think Pastor Jason has talked about that a lot before, but we want that to happen later when their gray matter is more developed, right? Or maybe later in life when they're still under your roof, so that you have a chance as a parent to pull them aside and like, hey, let's have a conversation about what you just saw, even though you never intended to see that in the first place. So that's what I meant by inadvertent disclosure, and that's what I think those last 2 lines of defense really help do, is make sure that you don't accidentally see something you didn't want to see.
Yeah, and relative to that is you might do all the protections on your kids' phones, but what if they go spend the night with somebody and their friends have phones, or at school and all their friends have phones, and your child is not trying to access any inappropriate content, but it gets accessed just in a group of kids that they happen to be around.
You gave my wife and I a tremendous resource that helped us with that when you told us about Protect Young Eyes, the social media account. I'm sure they have a website and everything. But their suggestion was 5 before 5, and I think it's 10 before 10. You need to sit down with your child and have 5 conversations about inadvertent, sexually explicit materials and how to respond when they see it. And it had great guidelines and suggestions. And I think I told you about when we had our first one, and I was playing Connect 4 with one of our kids who are competitive people. And as we got into the conversation, I had beat them 4 times, and they're still just mindlessly dropping these things in, because even if your child has not yet been exposed, they are aware, whether you realize it or not. And it's just a safe way to begin opening the door, coming back to what you said earlier of, hey, this is not 1973 where I hand you a book at 12 years old and say, we're going to go talk about birds and bees later. This is an ongoing conversation for the rest of our days.
Right. If you wait until you give your kid a phone to have the conversations about all of this stuff, you are way behind.
Yes. But not beyond reclamation.
Right.
Not so far behind, let's just give up. But we can.
Yeah, I would use my favorite term, that you have credit card parented, which means.
I was so hoping you dropped that term in this. I just didn't know how to put the ball in the
I recognize that I'm taking the easy way out now, and that it will be harder in the future for me to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
So if we want to put our head in the sand and not talk about, sexual things and, cyberbullying and predator things, if we don't want to talk about that, that's your choice. I would say that's a bad choice, but I would say you need to recognize it's way harder when they're 12 to try to get all that information in there than to start when they're 5 and develop it in an age-appropriate manner.
Yeah.
So it's kind of your choice. Do you want the hard at the beginning, or do you want the really, really extremely hard at the middle?
And it's awkward. But I think awkward is one of the enemy's favorite tools for suburbia in America, because so much of our life is built around the pursuit and protection of comfort, and awkward is the opposite, so we avoid it, and it's woof. Okay, so you've led into an area I want to go to, because I want to discuss some practical things. In y'all's research and in the booklet, you talk about suggestions before I ever give my kid a phone. whatever that is for every household. Could you maybe share some thoughts or some tips for a parent that might be trying to navigate that right before we give them a phone? Because Christmas is going to be roughly 2 months after this. That's a very expensive Christmas gift to give a whatever-year-old. But yeah, what would be some suggestions of things before your kid gets a phone?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is to think through all the question words, the who, what, when, where, how, things like who gets to look at the device. Do we ever give our phone to someone else to let them, hey, let me show you something,
Yeah.
Who pays for stuff? Robbie's right that if you give a child a game and they run out of lives, they want some more lives. And so who gets to pay for things like that? If you give your child an allowance, does he get to use $1 to buy 5 more lives?
Yeah.
What apps are appropriate? What protocols are we going to have in place? What gets password? Who knows the passwords? When is the phone going to be used? Where's it going to live? All of those question words are great. And you have to have that conversation with your child so that you can move from the what, like saying your phone doesn't live in your room at night is just the what. That's the what parameter. But to say to them, because studies have shown that if it's in your room, your brain literally doesn't shut off like it does if it's not in your room.
Even if it's just on the side table.
So your sleep suffers. Therefore, because I want you to get a good night's sleep, your phone needs to live in the living room.
That's good.
Or I don't want you waking up in the middle of the night and going, oh, I wonder if anyone's texted me, or I wonder if let's play another couple of rounds of the game that I love.
Yeah.
It's just, that's why we do it, because we want to move to godliness where you don't feel like you have to look at it all the time, right? So answering those, the question word questions.
And I think from a technology standpoint, you don't have to go buy, a flagship, quote unquote flagship smartphone for your kid's first device. There are phones that you can give them that are kind of transition them into that realm. Maybe you just want them, maybe you want to be able to call them after work, after school or whatever, and be like, hey, I need to get a hold of my kid or whatever. But that's the extent that I want to go to. Those still exist.
Yeah.
We probably trained that, oh yeah, no, it's an iPhone or nothing, but that's not the case. And then if you, when you get the device, don't give it to them in the box, right?
Yes, that's
what you said. Take it out of the box, turn it on, and set up the parental blocks that come naturally with the phone. If you decide to use one of the monitoring softwares, then set that up prior to, get it tethered to your phone. And then also remember this. Americans are horrible with passwords. We don't like to make good passwords because they're hard to remember. So make your password, if you have like a family 4-digit code.
The kid's birthday.
Yeah.
Right.
No. I'll offset it by birth order. They'll never guess.
Yeah. Don't make your name be your password.
If you have a kitten named Sniffles, don't make the password Sniffles,
No, this is good.
Because that's what happens. And it, family codes is another big one. Like, the garage code is a 4-digit whatever, and that's what you make for your password for literally
I'm going to
everything.
back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
You have said something before that has not left me, and it is that even though you give your child a phone, it is important that they know it's your phone.
Right, yeah.
It is the parent's phone. It's not the child's.
Yeah, that needs to be established early, that I would say 99.9 times out of whatever, 100, 1,000.
Well, if you go bigger than 100, it loses significance. So
say to the child, this is my phone that I'm allowing you to rent from me, or I'm giving you access to it.
Yeah.
Which means at any moment I can take it back.
Yeah.
Look at your, and I would even say don't give your children heads up about that, because so many times they are able to, the speed at which kids can do things on phones, it is amazing. So if you say, hey, I'm going to check your phone when I get home tonight,
cool.
it's going to be wiped. You're not going to see anything. So just to walk in and say, hey, let me see your phone, and then boom. And then just to tell them, the reason I do that is because I own this phone and I want you to to treat it a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you can't prove to me that you do it, then you've proven to me that maybe we need to look at other options.
That's
like
good.
my kids always used to say, well, I can't look at that because my parents took away my phone. And I'm like, no. I didn't take your phone away. You took it away when you made those choices.
You gave me my phone back.
This is not my fault. This is your fault because of the choices that you made.
That's good.
Right? So they can remember, this isn't me just trying to stick it to you. We had an agreement. You broke that agreement, and there are consequences. So give me my phone back.
That's good. I want to come back to one thing you said, and then we'll come back to agreement, and then we'll probably wrap this up. I love the suggestion of not a smartphone to start, and giving your child so much of this being a how can I protect my family motivated set of decisions. There's also opportunity here to not be defensive, but to allow our children to demonstrate that they have earned trust, and to demonstrate that through all of the work God has done in their life, He is developing certain characters that we want to praise Him for. So given a dumb phone to let them demonstrate trust within the parameters that we have for it, I think is a great idea, because it's something that it also gives you an excuse to celebrate their decision making. And just like we don't want to, and picking up on what you said earlier, Medlin, even with your own children, the emphasis is on the word choice, not you are a bad person.
Right.
You made a bad choice.
Yeah, you are my child who I will always love, and I have to express that so you know that it's also true of God. That choice was dumb, but also to have the opportunities where we can say, I am so proud of the choice that you made. I love that. The agreement that you mentioned earlier, and we've talked about this before. When I graduated high school, it was the same with my sisters. We sat down with our parents, and there was a contract, for lack of a better term. And in that contract were certain expectations that if we met, guaranteed certain things, like, hey, if I'm taking at least a full course load of 12 hours and I am maintaining this GPA, I get full use of their car that they have let me drive through high school. And so to fail to meet those expectations, and then we also contributed towards the insurance for that vehicle. And so it was one amount during the summer, one amount during the school year. But what was helpful for me as just a stubborn teenager of them is it's in writing.
Right.
There's no dispute over who said what and what the agreement was, but also like it's not personal anymore.
Right.
Like it taught me how to budget this money, one, but also it taught me agreements and contracts. And as a parent, if we're going to have these parameters, why not put them in writing? We're not going to advertise it on a yard sign. I don't want to embarrass them, but hey, man, if you're ever confused, just come to the filing cabinet. Right. There's the paper right there.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, that's good life training, because every one of these children are going to go out and get a job, and that company is going to say, we will give you this amount of money if you do this work.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if we don't do the work, then we expect them to say, you're fired. We're not going to continue to pay you if you don't do this work.
Yeah.
And so contracts teach that, but it also does. It takes the us against them out of it and just says, look, I'm sorry. This is what you agreed to. You know, the thing I like about a contract with transitional phones is you can use that as a carrot as well.
Yeah.
You want a smartphone? Okay, go a year with this phone and make good choices.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a conversation. You earn the smartphone instead of just give the smartphone.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, this is kind of an example of what I'll be a little loose here, but it's like an older parenting style that's been modified to handle smartphones and technology.
Yeah.
Because if I go ask my folks, I'm like, hey, what should I do with my kids when it comes to technology? Not because they're bad parents or that they don't have ideas, but they didn't have to do that with me. It wasn't around. So a lot of other issues in parenting that come up, I'm able to call my parents and be like, hey, how would you handle this situation or whatever? But with smartphones and technology, you can't really do that. But it is possible to take some of the older or more traditional, parenting methods and styles and things that we inherited from our parents, and then modify them and apply them to technology. It's not just,
keep
whole
the heart
new
of what
clean
worked,
slate.
but adapt it to what's needed.
To technology, right?
That's good. That's really good. Before we kind of wrap this up, I just want to point out once again, because you open with this, this is all incorporated into discipling our kids. And a misconception is that you can take all right, let's give all the info and then move on to discipleship. That's not what discipleship is. It's ongoing at all times. And I love the setup of the high-tech parenting. I love both of your hearts with it, because it's like, hey, this is all ongoing as we go. But yeah, it's where can we find this booklet? If I've listened, it's like, hey, I want to know this. Can I show this real quick?
That's just a part of it, but yeah.
I want to know the genius that came up with this.
That's a very small part of it.
Very small part. It runs off to the next page.
If you showed the original, it'd be like a 50 by 75 poster.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, okay?
No, yeah. Robbie's got like full on, I enjoy researching and data points genes within him, as do I. So when he called me for what was supposed to be probably a 15-minute, hey, I just want to talk to the parent of a kid. An hour and a half later, we got off the phone. But we had swapped all sorts of data. It's like, hey, let me reference this study that's published on children's mental health and wellness every year.
I'm not like that.
And God has brought us all together.
That's right.
Where can I find this?
So right now we literally just launched it like 2 weeks ago, and so
3 weeks ago, if you're listening the day this is released.
Oh, that's right.
There you go.
We don't need to get hung up on
What
that.
kind of weird world is this?
We're in the future.
It's the future. Maybe we can come back and then go back to.
No, I think
future.
right now they can email me through the church, and I'll just send it to them because we have this in a PDF version.
What is your church email address?
Okay, I didn't know if I could say it. It's jason@nsbcweatherford.com.
Okay.
So they can just
Don't give us the password to your email.
email me, and I will send it to them. And if they want a printed copy, they can just call the church and ask for. I can print them one and give it to them. The great thing is, so you get the booklet, you read through it. There's a QR code that you can scan to take you to a online survey that kind of creates your family profile of how many devices you have, what coverage do you want, which children do you want coverage on, that kind of stuff, to kind of create your own profile. Eventually that will get sent to me, and then either I will call the family or Robbie will call the family and say, hey, tell me a little bit about what you want, what you don't want. And then if it's overwhelming to you, like so many parents, they just get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know what that means. What does it mean to change the router? What does it mean to set up screen time? Then someone will literally come to your house and help you do it manually.
That's cool.
We don't want this to be so hard that you just throw your hands up and don't do anything.
Yeah.
We're trying to help you on as you go. So
That's really great.
I would say email or call my office to the church.
It is available if you
It is
come
available.
ask, and then there will be a day that it is widely
Yes,
available.
that's correct.
It's showing in select screenings now,
Right.
but we'll have
Coming
a
in
commercial.
IMAX later.
Okay, that's fair.
We're going to IMAX.
Robbie, Jason, thank y'all for being here. This has been a treat, and just thank y'all for working on this. It's been an incredible thing. One last thing, real quick. If I have a student or a child, and I feel like hearing this, I have fumbled on things, but y'all have hit things that speak to my heart. I can't put the genie back in the bottle, but if I know we need to pivot as a family, do either of you have like a quick prompt or something that might help begin that conversation between me and my child?
I think just being open with your child and saying, I have messed up as a parent.
Yeah.
Starting there of saying, and because I've messed up, I need to apologize to you, but also know that we need to make some changes. And not just say, I need to make some changes on your phone, but make sure they understand that this applies to you and it applies to them. The number one thing that I hear from students about their parents is, I wish my parents would operate under the same set of rules that they put on me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's important for parents to say, look, I've messed up. We need to make some changes. We're going to be putting some filters or some content, some guardrails on everybody's phone, because I want us to start working on godliness
That's good.
in our family.
That's good.
And be open to say, what do you guys think about that? What are your reservations? You know, because they'll tell you, what about how I do this, or what about how I do this, or what about how I do this? And then you just have that conversation so that they don't feel like you're just coming in like a prison warden and saying, we're doing this. Don't
Yeah.
argue with me. Go to your room.
Yeah, demonstrate for them what confession looks like.
Right.
So that when they have to, they can at least see an example of it from you.
And they see the humility at which you're trying to lead them that says, I'm not going to get everything right as a parent. Here's an area that I've messed up. Now we got to fix it, and let's move on.
That's great. That's great. We're going to end on that. Thank you for listening to the Every Gym podcast.